Welcome back to KOAN Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM. We're honored to have with us Captain Joe John. Served in the Navy with distinction, 3 tours in Vietnam, served in Desert Storm, part of 9 counter-terrorist ops. He wasn't a SEAL, but worked with the SEALs because he was a fluent Arabic speaker. He is currently in charge of Combat Vets for Congress, a fantastic organization that has helped elect a number of solid conservatives with combat experience to the Congress. Welcome, Captain John.
Well, thank you, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and your audience should know that you serve with distinction in the Army. You're a West Point graduate and received a Bronze Star in your operations, combat operations.
Well, nothing like what you guys did. I mean, the service in Vietnam, then extending all the way up to Desert Storm, your counter-terrorist ops. I mean, you have been at the point of the spear with respect to stuff in the Middle East, I would assume, because of your Arabic lingual skills, correct?
Yeah, that brought me in, and I enjoyed the work and feel like I'm sitting on the bench now. Wish I was back in there.
Well, not exactly, though. You're working the political side of it effectively. I enjoy the emails that you send out. One of the ones that I just saw, apparently you wrote an op-ed on Valerie Jarrett. And the reason why that's important to me, I was actually asked during the 14 race about a comment that I'd made regarding Obama, where I basically said, he's not making all the calls. There are others behind the scenes that are doing it. The reporter reacted with it very incredulously, basically saying, well, you must be some sort of conspiracy theorist or something, and asked for names. And I said, well, let's try Valerie Jarrett, for instance. And this reporter didn't even know who Jarrett was. Can you tell the audience a little bit about Jarrett, why you think she's influential in the administration, and why that poses a danger to the country?
Well, Valerie Jarrett is by birth an Iranian. And over the years, the last 6 years, if you just, I often tell people, don't listen to what they say, look at what they do. And if you look at what the current administration has done with regard to relations in the Middle East, they've basically shifted their focus on Iran and trying to get a nuclear agreement with Iran and have effectively helped Iran in the Middle East. Iran has effectively taken over the capitals of Baghdad, taken over the capital in Syria, has taken over the capital in Libya, has taken over the capital in Yemen, and effectively has taken over the capital in Lebanon. And this has all happened on the current occupant of the Oval Office's watch. And his primary advisor during all this time has been Valerie Jarrett. And she has some kind of a close relationship with the ruling party in Iran. And it's anyone in the intelligence agency will tell you, just look at what's going on. Our traditional allies in the Middle East, people like Jordan and Morocco and Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and the Emirates and Kuwait are all having difficulty trying to get the current administration to support their efforts in the Middle East. We have shifted our energies to Iran, and that really comes from Valerie Jarrett.
So the Yemen takeover, I mean, that's actually in progress right now, isn't it?
Well, you can say it's in progress, but they've effectively closed down the U.S. Embassy. They've effectively removed our intelligence operation out of the country. This is the op-ed of the Iranians. They've been working the Yemen operation for 2 years, and they've effectively taken control of the country.
I read last week the Jordanian government talking about the problems it's had in cooperation with the United States in their fight against ISIS. And apparently the Obama administration turned down their request for drone operations. Were you aware of that? And can you think of any reason as to why the United States would turn down such a request?
I think everything is aimed at the relationship with Iran in the Middle East. One of the reasons we're having problems in the plains of Nineveh, where the Syrian Christians have had a traditional homeland for 3,000 years, the oldest Christian community in the world, is because they don't want to upset the Iranians who have their troops in Syria helping Assad by going after Assad's military, the U.S., that is. And so everything, if you look at every issue in the Middle East, you can see that everything we are doing is not to upset the Iranians. And that, again, is those drones would upset the Iranians. And if you just go to every capital, you'll see their operation are designed not to upset the apple cart with the Iranians so they can get this nuclear agreement with them, which is basically going to give them the right to build nuclear weapons. They'll be one step away from a nuclear weapon.
So you see, obviously, Iran as a threat. I mean, that goes without saying. What do you think will happen if they end up with a nuclear weapon?
Well, I think if they end up with a nuclear weapon, there'll be a nuclear weapons race in the Middle East. The Saudis will go after nuclear weapons. The Turks will go after nuclear weapons. The Egyptians will go after nuclear weapons. The Kuwaitis, the United Arab Emirates. We're going to have a nuclear race in the Middle East if it doesn't explode before then. If Israel doesn't drop nuclear weapons on Iran. I mean, it's a very dangerous situation. The Israelis have over 200 nuclear weapons. They consider Iran having a nuclear weapon as a dagger thrust against their survival. I wouldn't put it past Israel to drop nuclear weapons on Iran. This is all because of the policies of the current administration in the Middle East. They're turning the Middle East into a terrible situation. It could lead to World War III. I can see. I could see possibly that the Russians may jump in to help the Iranians, which would be a terrible thing. So we've got a very dangerous situation occurring now.
So how long until Israel acts? How long or how far will Israel let Iran go?
Well, we've seen estimates that they will effectively have a nuclear weapon anywhere from 6 months to a year. I don't think the Israelis can possibly let that happen. It would be all they have to do is fire a couple of their ICBMs with nuclear missiles on it. All you need is 2 nuclear explosions in Israel to destroy the country. I don't think Netanyahu can let that happen. If I were Netanyahu, I wouldn't let that happen. And we have blinders on in Washington D.C. Not letting that happen. That speech that Netanyahu is going to give to the Congress is a very important speech.
So do you think that Valerie Jarrett is a Shiite, or do you have any idea at all as to what her religious background is?
Well, there've been a lot of people who said she's not an Iranian and she's not a Muslim, but nobody has said she's a Christian. You look at them to say, okay, she's a Christian. My feelings, this is personal feelings, I think she's a black Muslim. I don't think she's a Shiite from Iran, but I do think she's a Muslim. It's part of the message we're getting out of the White House, which is basically a Muslim kind of support message that we get out of the White House. I don't know what she is, but nobody out of the White House for 6 years has said she's a Christian. You can't find that anywhere.
Unlike what they're doing with Obama, saying, hey, he's attended the same church for decades, et cetera. Franklin Graham had an interesting post on Facebook. We'll talk about more of that after the break, but basically laying out the intimate connections between Obama and Islam as a way of explaining why he's doing what he's doing. Back with Captain John after a few minutes of news. Welcome back to KOAN Hot Talk, 95.1 FM, 1080 AM, The Joe Miller Show. We have an exciting guest with us, Captain Joseph John. Served with distinction, 3 tours in Vietnam, Desert Storm, 9 counter-terrorist ops. He's a linguist, knows Arabic. He's also in charge of Combat Vets for Congress PAC, doing a lot of good there. And in addition to this, I left this out last segment, he served in the FBI, before that the DHS. And one of the things we were talking about during the break, Captain John, dealt with speculation about the motivations in the Obama administration. We talked a little bit about what Jarrett is, whether or not, her personal motivation is Islamic or whether it's something else. A number of the listeners to our show, people have commented on our website. They think that Obama is a Muslim. We even put up an article today about him allegedly using a Muslim hand gesture during a leadership summit with African leaders, most of whom were Muslim. I think that article itself is kind of weak as far as its evidence goes, but it did remind a lot of people about what President Obama said in 2008. Mr. Producer, if you could play that clip.
What I was suggesting, you are absolutely right that John McCain has not talked about my Muslim faith, and you're absolutely right that that has not
Christian
come
faith.
My Christian faith. And well, what I'm saying is he hasn't suggested that I'm a Muslim.
Right. So a lot of people heard that clip. They thought, that was a slip of the tongue, reflecting who he really is. Captain John, do you have a personal view on this?
I certainly do. And, again, I tell your listeners to watch what he does, not what he says. And if you go back to 6 years of the current administration and see what he's done with regard to Muslims and how he's lost his cool at the Pentagon and the Joint Chiefs of Staff when they talked about Muslim threat and stomped out of one of those Joint Chiefs of Staff meetings because they used the word Muslim. You have to really watch what he's done, and he's all the indications are he is very sympathetic. He's probably not a practicing Muslim, but he's extremely sympathetic to that faith, and he won't utter the word Islamic, even though radical Islamic terrorists have been killing Americans since 1979.
Do you have any other reason to believe what you believe about his sympathies toward Islam?
I can't tell you about some of the things I've read when I was in the Bureau, but just the way he operates with regard to his approach to this conflict with the radical Islamic terrorists who've been killing us, killing thousands of Americans for the last 36 years. They're at war with us, and he's not at war with them.
Right, and in fact, his suggested approach now to ISIS has been deconstructed by a number of military experts. We're going to have one on next week that talks about exactly that, or maybe tomorrow even, how he fails to identify the enemy, basically confuses the strategy, doesn't have a coherent strategy, and it's just more of the same, something that won't have any real impact in rolling back the threat.
You have to when you're in conflict, whether you're against the Nazis or the Japanese in World War II or the communist threat, you have to identify the threat so that the personnel opposing the threat can know how to deal with the threat. Even the Joint Chiefs of Staff are very conflicted on how they're going to deal with the threat that's facing this country. And that's basically because it comes right from the top. You can't dare use that word, Islamic.
And of course, that's not the only damage this president has been doing to the national security of the country. In addition, he's taken steps to really create problems within the military structure itself. What are some of the things that you've observed over the last 6 years that Obama has done to hurt the readiness of the force?
When I look at the U.S. Armed Forces, everything really depends upon combat readiness. And no one should be doing anything at DOD that would affect combat readiness. And everything that has been done in the last 6 years has detracted from combat readiness. The tip of the spear groups that we have, like the SEALs and the Rangers, the Green Berets, and the Marine Corps ground forces are being forced to accept females. There's nothing wrong with females. They've been serving in the military since the Revolutionary War. But there are places where they're effective, and there are other places where they're not effective. So the gender issue is a serious issue. The other thing is allowing gays into the military has really damaged the retention in the military. If you saw the recent articles, 11,000 straight males have been sexually assaulted in the military. That's a huge number, and it's being covered up by the Pentagon. That's something that never happened before. There are other things that he's done. It appears that right now the Air Force is getting ready to allow transgender people into the military, which is insanity. I don't know. When we've got 350 million people in the country, there's no need to bring in transgender people into the military. There are plenty of straight people. There are 90 million people out of work. A lot of people would like to get a military billet just to have the pay. So I don't know why these things are being done in the military. They are destabilizing the military forces.
Well, don't you think it's because he wants to change the the general ideological approach that most military people have? I mean, I think he really wants to change the conservative nature, the traditional conservative nature of the United States Armed Forces.
Well, he's really violated freedom of speech and freedom of religion in the U.S. Armed Forces. He's prevented the chaplains from reading messages from the cardinals to their parishioners. He's forced chaplains whose well-held beliefs, religious beliefs, are against same-sex marriages to have same-sex marriages in chapels on their bases. He's also allowed gay rights parades and gay rights celebrations on military bases when we know that there should be no political agendas on any military base, any kind of political agenda. And gay rights parades and gay rights celebrations on a military base is a political event.
Did you happen to see the video from Guam? There was some sort of a entertainment night that somebody sent me the video of it. I don't even think we put it up on Restoring Liberty. It was that bad. Did you have a chance to see that?
No, I haven't seen that.
It's very unfortunate. Military personnel in attendance. It clearly is. And, when I was in not so long ago, in those that I still know that are serving, I graduated from West Point in '89, so these guys are nearing they're in their 25th year of service. It's pretty extraordinary to hear what they have to say about it. They just shake their heads in disbelief. Some of the young people that are coming in, we do have a generational differential as far as approach to these issues go. But I don't see how you can run a coherent, for example, combat unit and have this kind of integration taking place. I mean, how do you practically work out a transvestite in a combat unit, or for that matter, a homosexual in a combat unit? I couldn't imagine, just going back to Desert Storm, the months that we were out in the desert by ourselves, if it had been a mixed-gendered unit. It would have just been horrific. I mean, there would have been problems all over. The Israelis have seen that. And in fact, I think the Israelis, you would probably agree with me, might be more instructive on this issue.
Yeah, the cohesiveness of a combat unit can't be emphasized enough. People have to, you're really fighting for the man on your right and the man on your left. And if you have uneasy feelings about these people, it will affect the combat readiness of the unit. And that's going on right now. People are leaving the military who wanted to stay in the military because they were concerned about a lot of these issues. So, yeah, he is destabilizing the U.S. Armed Forces. And I'm hoping that in a year and 8 months, there'll be a change, and we'll get back to cohesive combat-ready units in the military.
Tell us a little bit about Combat Vets for Congress, where you expect to take it, the successes you've had in past elections.
Well, we started this unit over 6 years ago. Congressman Barry Goldwater and myself founded this unit. The idea was to bring back combat veterans into the Congress because the votes in Congress were detracting from the military readiness, the equipment, advanced weapons research, pay raises, benefits for the military, veterans issues, the VA. And so we decided to try to go out and recruit and vet combat veterans who'd come off the battlefield. We talked, in the last 6 years, we've talked about 350 combat veterans, and we've endorsed 102 combat veterans, and 80 of those combat veterans, 80 plus of those combat veterans have won their primary races. The selection process is very, very strict. 27 of those 80 combat veterans have served in Congress. Currently, some people like Congressman West were defeated, and we think the voting was fraudulent in his particular case. But 20 of these combat veterans are now serving in Congress. Some have retired, some have been defeated. 3 of them are serving in the Senate, and 17 are serving in the House.
So why do you think go ahead, I'm sorry.
The up-and-coming election in 2016 will be the most important election in the 240-year history of the United States, and we are going to work really hard to recruit, vet, endorse, and campaign for a new slate of combat veterans to run in Congress. And, of course, we will support the 20 combat veterans in Congress right now as well.
Why is it important to elect combat vets to Congress?
It's important to elect combat veterans to Congress because they put their life on the line in the defense of the U.S. Constitution, to protect and defend the Constitution. They raised their right hand and swore to protect and defend the U.S. Constitution. You know there are 23 million veterans in this country. They're still protecting and defending the U.S. Constitution. It's part of a mindset. And that's not going on in the Congress today. They're violating the Constitution and allowing the occupant of the Oval Office to violate the U.S. Constitution. And the other thing is we need to maintain a strong military. The current administration is going to have a military that's less in size than it was before World War II, and we're going to have less ships in the U.S. Navy than we had before World War I. That's going on because of Congress permitting that to go on. We need people in Congress who can see that we have to have a strong and robust military force. So it's important that we get them into Congress.
So where can people help? Where can they go?
Well, they can go to our website. And, of course, we would like financial support, but that's not critical. Financial support for the endorsed combat veterans in their congressional district is really important. If they want to donate directly to those congressmen or those endorsed combat veterans, we would encourage that. We would always like to receive funds because we do have costs, and nobody in our organization is on a salary. We're the only PAC in the nation that doesn't have people on salary. Everybody's a volunteer.
Well, fantastic. Captain Joe John, American patriot, working politics to elect people, important to turn this nation back to where it needs to be, get the national security of the nation squared away. Really appreciate everything that you're doing, Captain John. Keep up the good work, and we'll have you back from time to time.
Thank you, Joe.